what I'm talking about. So, anyhow, I had a friend over, somebody I just met, was a guest in my house for, he was a healer from South Africa, a very religious man from a certain Hasidic movement, and he knew about Tshuva for many years. And he tells me that we have a dog, and maybe he doesn't like dogs, but he started learning, and the dog walked in the room, and he said, when we do a Davar Shebekadusha, we shouldn't have a dog around. Now, he was older than me, and a very serious type, and I was thinking about this. Now, I heard from Rabbi Steinsaltz of the Old City of Jerusalem that if you can touch a dog, you can pet a dog, you just can't touch their mouth or their backside. If the dog licks you, you should wash your hands. This kind of thing. But the idea, in the Gemara, there's a lot of things about dogs. You can give a whole shir about dogs, and I'm not going to now. Says generally Chazal said to keep a dog outside. Now the idea of not having a dog inside, does that have a reason for it? And when you're making kiddush, can your dog be in the room? I don't like saying things if I haven't seen them written in a sefer from a great rabbi. So this is clearly just my own svara. Which is, and the svara is that in the old days there was a lot more superstition. People believed in magic and witchcraft and all this kind of nonsense, and people really believed it, so it had a much greater power. Because the more you believe in something, the more powerful it is. If you don't believe in something so much, it will have a much smaller power. It may still happen. There may be magic and witchcraft today. However, if you don't believe in it, I don't believe in that stuff so much. So there's much less of a chance of that kind of thing having a power over me. People used to do witchcraft. The witches and warlocks would have a familiar, meaning an animal. Like in Harry Potter, where they go to Hogwarts and they have to have an animal with them, kind of thing. So it might be a holdover from that. It may be because it couldn't be because it's a tameh animal. Because you can learn Torah or make kiddush and Shabbos if there's an ant crawling on the floor. That doesn't. Okay, I suppose if you want to be super machmir, you could remove the ants from the room. You might have a little problem on Shabbos with trapping. You're not supposed to trap an animal, even an ant. So the reason perhaps is that the dogs, they could be smelly, or they have this belief in witchcraft, or perhaps in the Shabbos table it's a davar shebekadusha, and dogs like to steal things from the table sometimes if you're not looking. And so I would say, in my humble opinion, with the dogs, it's just to not let the dog come near the Shabbos table, not have him under the table, or keep him daled amos away from the Shabbos table if at all possible, and then it's perfectly okay. So he doesn't the reason is so he doesn't grab food from off the table. Or, of course, a person can't have a dangerous dog in their house. You can only have a well-trained and well-behaved dog. I would like it if somebody could show me a source of this thing about, not having a dog around when you're doing a davar shebekadusha, when you're doing a holy thing, doing a mitzvah. I don't subscribe to this. I'm ready to be proven wrong if somebody can prove me wrong. So I'm teaching Daf Yomi here, and my dog Douglas is in the room. So if anybody wants to turn this off because there's a dog in the room, go ahead. I don't really want to teach you anyway if you have this kind of attitude. Okay, now we're going to get to Daf Yomi. Okay. It's Daf Yomi, Perek 4. We're in chapter 4. And we were talking about the fascinating story about Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel was the Nasi, the president of the Sanhedrin, about the generation after the destruction of the temple, perhaps two, and Rabban Gamliel was saying that the Tfilat Aravit is Chova, and Rabbi Yeshua said Tfilat Aravit, the Ma'ariv, the evening prayer, is Reshut. That Rabbi Yeshua said it's optional. Rabbi Gamliel says it's obligatory. So for this, Rabban Gamliel punished him by making him stand up, and Rabban Gamliel apparently was very difficult with Rabbi Yeshua, making him many times. And the other members of the Sanhedrin thought he was being excessively difficult with Rabbi Yeshua, so they were murmuring amongst each other, and they said it's time to remove Rabban Gamliel from his position. Man nokim le, nokme le Rabbi Yeshua. It was so agreed. The question arose: who shall we establish in this place? Shall we establish Rabbi Yeshua as the new Nasi, the new head of the Sanhedrin, the new chief rabbi of all of Israel? Nokme le Rabbi Akiva. Nokme, not nukme. Nokme le Rabbi Akiva. Let's establish Rabbi Akiva. Dilma aneshle deleit le zchut avot. The sages rejected that opinion because Rabbi Yeshua was party to the incident. So perhaps to say Baal Maisahu. It said because he's part of this incident, they're going to think we're just making him the Nasi. What does it mean, Baal Maisahu? Some explain that Rabbi Yeshua was not appointed because that would have created the impression that he initiated the dispute in order to, as a ploy to be appointed Nasi. The Maharsha teaches us that. So, what about Rabbi Akiva, they said? Sages rejected that opinion because he descended from a family of converts and he would be vulnerable. Perhaps Rabban Gamliel's due to Rabban Gamliel's resentment, it would cause him divine punishment as he lacks the merit of his ancestors to protect him. I guess if somebody is a convert, this Gemara is suggesting that maybe he has less zchut avot. That the Chachamim thought that at the time, meaning, but in other words, he has the merit of Abraham, but in terms of his DNA and his blood, he doesn't have the merit of Isaac or Jacob. So I don't like this idea. I don't like the traditional firm attitude about never trust a convert. I think we're enjoined 50 times or so in the Chumash to love the convert and to welcome the convert. So I understand that there are people who have convert and they don't really convert, but once you do an Orthodox conversion, you can't stop being Jewish. You can't hustle them. I mean, even if somebody stops keeping Shabbos, or stops keeping the mitzvahs, they're still obligated to the mitzvahs, and they're going to be punished by God or somehow by their failure to keep the mitzvahs if somebody converts and doesn't keep his word. So, on the other hand, some converts we find are much more scrupulous and machmir in their performance of mitzvahs than regular Jews. Regular Jews get jealous of the converts because of their excellence, because of their dedication. That's kashay kasapachat. Why is a convert difficult on Israel like a burn, like a burn or a leprosy? It's because there's some converts that are so careful about the mitzvot and so wonderful servants of God that it puts the Balabatim to shame. So the Balabatim have to get over it, and they have to do their best too, and they have to say, okay, we have a wonderful soul coming into our people, and we should honor him, we should make him a rabbi. Okay, or something like that. Now it's not say, just don't trust him, maybe he grew up in a bad family, blah blah blah. No, we're supposed to welcome the convert and do everything we can to encourage the convert and respect the convert for their excellence and admit the truth if the convert is not keeping the Torah and try to help them come back to the fold. So I'm not going to go off on this too much anymore. Rabbi Akiva was not made the Nasi of the Sanhedrin because he was his father. I believe it was his father who was converted, his father Yosef, if I'm not mistaken. But he, on his mother's side, I think he was related to Kalev ben Yeshua. So he did have quite a lot of zchut avot. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ele nokme l'Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, d'hu chacham, v'hu ashir, v'hu asirei le'ezra. Rather, let's establish Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He's wise, he's rich, he's 10 generations from Ezra, he's a direct, he has yichus to Ezra. But v'hu chacham, d'hi makshilam mefarakle. The Gemara explains he's wise, so if Rabban Gamliel raises a challenge in matters of Torah, he will answer it and not be embarrassed. Hu ashir itzle lefaluche leve kesar af hu izel ufalach. He's rich, so if he needs to arise and pay homage to Caesar's court and serve as a representative of Israel to lobby and negotiate, he has sufficient wealth to cover the costs of the long journeys, taxes, and gifts. So he too is able to pay homage to the Caesar. Hu asiri le'ezra le'zchut avot v'lo matzeh aneshle. So we have to bow our heads and respect the opinion of the sages that if somebody with on the level, I don't know if it's true today because we're so far away, and everybody, the zchut avot is really basically your connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Just because somebody is as a famous rabbi in their family, or their father, or their grandfather, or their great-great-grandfather, that's very nice. And then all the mitzvahs that our forefathers do indeed protect us. But really, zchut avot, as the Gemara itself says, is a connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you are children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you have zchut avot. So, but perhaps the Gemara, the sages are suggesting, and we have to accept this, that if you have a special connection to someone like 10 generations from Ezra, then if somebody who might not have such a connection could somehow, perhaps even, God forbid, be damaged if they get into an argument. If the argument is for the sake of heaven, I think the machlokas for the sake of heaven would protect. But if the argument for some reason was not for the sake of heaven, then and the tzedek was on the side of the one with more, so to speak, more yichus, more zchut avot, then it's possible, it's suggested by this Gemara. I don't understand it, but this is the truth of the Gemara, that the person could, the convert or the person with less zchut avot could be damaged. So. And he is 10th generation Ezra as a zchut avot. Rabban Gamliel will be unable to cause him to be punished. They said to him, would the master consent to being the head of the yeshiva? They asked Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, come be the nasi. Amar lahu ezil ve'imlich be'enashe ve'ti. He said, I will go and consult with the people in my family, in my household. Azal ve'imlich vidvetu. He didn't say, I'm going to go ask my wife. He said, I'm going to go consult with Bnei Beiti, with the people in my household. But what he really meant was, he's got to ask his wife. So, I like that. So, Azal ve'imlich vidvetu v'amrula, she said to him, there's room for concern. Perhaps they'll remove you from office just the way they removed Rabban Gamliel. She said, you can take the position, but you have to be very well prepared. That you're playing with the big boys. You're in the Sanhedrin. You're going to be the president of the Sanhedrin, the chief rabbi of all of Israel, the head of the court. And it's a lot of pressure, and you may be deposed. So, he said to her, based on the folk saying, let a person use an expensive goblet one day and let it break tomorrow. Mokra, loshen yakar, from expensive, mokra in Aramaic, and let it break tomorrow. In other words, take advantage of a good opportunity, even though there's a danger. Amrale leit lach chivarta. She said to him, you don't have any white hair. You want to be the nasi of the Sanhedrin? You got to have white hair. They're not going to look at you. She's such a simple observation. She said, you're 18 years old. Yes, I know you're a genius. I know you have yichus to Ezra, and I know you have, and I know we're rich, and but genius in the Torah and all of this, and you can stand up and all these things. You're 18. You have black hair. And so what happens? That day he was 18 years old, and a miracle transpired for him, and 18 rows of hair turned white. Hainu dekamar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Hari ani kaven shivim shana, velo ben shivim shana. That's why, as we learn in the Haggadah of Pesach and in another Mishnah, I am as if I am 70 years old today. It's as if I'm 70 years old, and he doesn't say I am 70 years old. Tana oto yom silku l'shomer petach v'nitna lehem reshut l'talmidim l'kanes shaya Rabban Gamliel machriz omer kol talmid she'en tochu kavaro lo yikanes lebeit midrash kol talmid she'en tochu kavaro lo yikanes lebeit midrash. It was taught on that day they removed Rabban Gamliel from his position and they appointed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And that day there was a fundamental change in the general approach in the study hall. As they dismissed the guard at the door and permission was given to students to enter. They used to use Rabban Gamliel's selective approach that asserted that the student must be screened before being accepted into the study hall, what we regular folks call Beis Medrash. The new approach asserted that anyone who seeks to study should be given the opportunity to do so. As Rabban Gamliel's position would say was, any student who's inside, his thoughts and feelings are not like his outside, meaning his conduct and character traits are lacking, he will not enter the study hall. Meaning a person should be transparent. That's interesting, because somebody who's has good in their heart, they shouldn't act on the outside in not good ways. Just because, he has a good heart, give him a break. No, he acts in a nasty way. How do you know what's in his heart anyway? You know a person by their actions. So if a person's actions can lie, it's an interesting subject that we won't get into because this is Daf Yomi, we have to speak fast. So, but you could also say that somebody in the study hall, he could have been a fierce, a reputable student. He knows his Gemara. He knows how to nosev and noten b'Torah, to pilpul. He knows his halacha. But let's say he has anger in his heart, God forbid, and he expresses that anger outwardly. But he's a good student, so perhaps he would be allowed into the study hall because he's transparent. He's very smart, but he's a bit of an angry guy. And we got to help. We know he's like that, and we got to help him to do some anger management or something like that. This is a phrase, of course, we're coming back to Esav. It said Esav tzad b'fiv. The Rashi says when Esav he had the trapping of his fields in his mouth, he would trap animals and bring them back to Isaac, and it was that's tzad b'fiv. That's the taste of the good meat. But the drasha that Rashi brings from the Medrash is that he would trap him with his mouth, meaning he was out raping and murdering in the field, doing Esav stuff, this world stuff. And then when he saw his father, all of a sudden puts a shtreimel on and a bekasher, and he's mefalpeling about tithing salt. And so that wasn't the way he was in his heart. He was a man of the field. He was a man of the world, and he didn't express that when he was around his father. It's called being a phony. So just trying to curry favor. It's called chanfanut, flattery. So a flatterer is not allowed into the Beis Medrash according to Rabban Gamliel. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, no, we're going to be lenient. We're going to let even somebody who's a flatterer come into the Beis Medrash. Why? Because mitoch shelo yishma yavo lishma. Because if he's learning Torah not for the sake, if he's a flatterer, minastam, basically he's not learning Torah for the sake of heaven. But we're going to give him a chance, and we're going to let him learn. If he's even somebody who should always learn Torah, even if you have for the wrong reasons. It's mamash avodah zara. It's avodah zara mamash. It's complete idolatry for a person to learn Torah in order to be called a Rav or a Rebbe or for other people to gain honor with other people. That's despicable. So, but we allow a person to do that because we say mitoch shelo lishma yavo lishma. Okay, so he's a 18-year-old, 20-year-old guy in yeshiva, and he's learning for smicha. He's learning to be a rabbi, and his real reason in his heart is he wants to lead a congregation. He wants to sit at the head table. He wants the best piece of meat and all this nonsense. Okay, we still teach him, we bring him into the yeshiva, we still teach him, and we work with him, because we know that if we do it, if we're doing our job, he will stop learning Torah in order to be called a Rav, and in order to have some sort of control over other people. The Gemara relates, Ahu Yoma Istafu Kama Safsaleh, Amri Rabbi Yochanan, Ligiba Abu Yosef, Abba Yosef ben Dusai v'Rabban Chadamar itosfu arba mea safsaleh. Chadamar shvamo mea safsaleh. The Gemara relates, on that day several benches were added to the study hall to accommodate numerous students. Rabbi Yochanan said, Abba Yosef ben Dusai, and the rabbis disputed this matter. One said there were 400 benches added to the study hall. Another said 700 benches were added to the study hall. When he saw the tremendous growth in the number of students, excuse me. Rabbi Gamliel became disheartened. It was very difficult for him. It hurt him greatly. Amar Dilma Chas Shalom Manhati Torah Mi Yisrael. He said, he admitted, perhaps I have prevented the people of Israel from studying Torah. A Talmud Chochem, and all the more so the sages of the Talmud, they respect the truth. They are seekers of the truth. And when they are proven wrong, they will admit the truth. And if not, they're thrown out. Achazule bechelme chatzpe chivare demalyan kitma. They showed him in a dream. Who's they? The angels, perhaps? Showed him in a dream white jugs filled with ashes, alluding to the fact that the additional students were worthless idlers. So the angels were consoling Rabban Gamliel. They're saying, yeah, you have 400 new students, 700 new students, but they're worthless. They're just coming in here, maybe they're the ones who I'm sitting and studying, so I can be called rabbi and I can have control over people. They were these kinds. But really they were just singing around and smoking cigarettes, not really blowing smoke. The Gemara comments, Lohi, no, it's not that way, the Gemara says. Lohi, Hahid diatuve datehud echazule. The angels were just making peace. They were just trying to make Rabban Gamliel feel better. Rabban Gamliel, they weren't worthless students, they were good students, like we said before. That even though they may have been doing it for the wrong reasons, but with the future, when you look into the future with their potential, they have the ability to do it for the right reasons. And they will. It's a foregone conclusion that if you study Torah for the wrong reasons, eventually you will study it for the right reasons. I hope it's sooner rather than later. And so we talked about the sages being, to be a judge in Israel, one of the 7 characteristics is you have to run after the truth. However, we're taught that there's one thing greater than truth, and that's peace. We knew this from the Medrash. In another place it says God's seal is truth. Chotzmo emet. Aval shmo shalom. Emet is not a name of God. Emet is, truth is God's seal. Why? Because the Hebrew alphabet is not God. God created the letters of the Torah. But the letters of the Torah, let's say, in terms of a drasha, they represent God. So emet is what? Aleph, Mem, Taf. The first letter of the alphabet, the absolute middle letter of the alphabet, and Taf, the final letter of the alphabet. That's Haya, Hoveh, V'iyeh. Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future is Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is God. So, that's the seal, but that's just his seal. His seal is the alphabet. The Chotmo Emet. The alphabet is not God. It's his seal, the truth. Past, present, and future reality, that's the truth. But his name, something even beyond his seal, his very name, is Shalom. That's why, according to Halacha, we don't say Shalom in the mikveh. We don't say Shalom in the bathroom. Because Shalom is a name of God. It says in Tehillim, Ani Shalom. I am peace. Okay, continue. Tanad eduyot bo b'yom nishnet So we see how important it was to make peace, that even the angels would not lie a little bit. Sometimes, if in order to make peace, in order to make shalom bayis, a person it shouldn't really lie, but he can bend the truth a little bit to make peace. It says, "Medavar sheker tirchak," stay away from lies. But there are three cases, of course, everybody knows. I'm not going to get into it. Where it's permitted to lie. If somebody asks you about what you do in your bedroom, if somebody asks you about if somebody has a good place for Shabbos, if they have a lot of guests, they have a good meal, you lie so the person doesn't get burdened with tons of guests. Say, it's okay, it's not so great. And then Masechta, if anybody ever asks you, do you know Shas, or do you know Masechet Brachos? If you say, I don't really know. A little bit. I try to understand it. And you could be you learned Masechet Brachos for 70 years, and you know every Mefarish, and you can do it backwards and forwards, and upside and down. But if a person knows that he doesn't know, because Tachlit al-Yediyah Shelo Nida, the point of knowledge is that we don't really know in the end. We're taught by our master, the Baal Shem Tov. It tells us that Halu Chelach U'Bechol Nosei Meshech Hazarah. He's in the Shir Malos, he's crying, he's going away. He's going to come singing, holding his sheaves. Normally we think that the one guy he's far away from God, he's not having a good time in life. All he has is a handful of seeds. And he's going to come laughing, holding his sheaves. The Baal Shem Tov teaches the opposite way that we normally understand this. Normally understand this the way Rashi understands this. The Baal Shem Tov understands it this way, that the one who's holding his sheaves is holding nothing but klippas, forces of evil, arrogance. He knows, he's been there, done that, and you can't tell him anything. Somebody who's a true student of the Torah, he's nosei meshech hazarav. He's holding his measure of seeds in his hands, and he's crying. Why? Because he knows that he's crying in awe of that no matter what he knows, the more knowledge he attains, the more he knows he doesn't know, the smaller he becomes, the more he seizes the great advance of the infinite, that there's a depth in the Torah far deeper for anybody to ever understand. Every matter of Torah has a depth far deeper from the human mind to fathom, and there's always another level a person could go if he puts his heart and soul into his Torah study. So here, what are those seeds? Those are the seeds of the infinite. That the more you know, the more you see that you don't know, and you get closer to God, and you reach Anava. Back to the Gemara. Tana eduyot b'yom nishnei, v'kol hechad amrinan bo b'yom hahu yom ahava. Lo hayta halacha shehayta tluya b'beit midrash shelo pershua, va'af Rabban Gamliel lo mana atzmo mibeit midrash afilu sha'achad. So it's a happy ending to the story. It's taught in eduyot that very day that Rabban Gamliel accepted, perhaps the day that he had the dream and he was disheartened, that day they taught Eduyot in the Beit Midrash, the famous part of the Mishnah. And everywhere in the Mishnah or in a Braita they say, on that day, it refers to this very day in history. The day this story happened. There was no halacha whose ruling was pending in the study hall that they did not explain, and arrived at a practical halachic conclusion. And even Rabban Gamliel did not avoid the study hall even for one moment. He held no grudge. He sat with the chachamim. He bowed his head to the rov, to the majority, and he joins with besimcha ubetuv levav, with joy. He joins back with his brethren and his colleagues. Tanan, bo b'yom ba Yehuda ger amoni lifneihem b'beit midrash amar lahem ma'ani levo l'kal. Ma'ani levo l'kal. As we learned on that day, Yehuda the Ammonite convert came before them and he said to them, what is my legal status in terms of entering the congregation? In other words, he's saying, can I marry a Jewish woman? He was an Ammonite convert. It says in Halacha, those who dwell in contemporary lands of Ammon and Moab, meaning Jordan, do not have the legal status of Ammonites and Moabites, and converts from these areas may enter the congregation of Israel in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. So let's now see the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. I first gave you the Psak Halacha, and now we'll see how that Psak Halacha was derived. Amar lo Rabban Gamliel, Asura Talabo Bakal. Rabban Gamliel said, you cannot enter the congregation. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, Mutar. Rabbi Yeshua said, no, you may enter the congregation. Mutar ata lavo b'kal. Amar lo Rabban Gamliel v'halo kavar ne'amar lo yavo amoni amoavi b'kal Hashem. Rabban Gamliel said to him, doesn't the pasuk, there's a mefurish, explicit pasuk, verse in the Torah that says that Ammoni and a Moavi can't come into the congregation of God, can't convert. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, v'chi Ammon u'Moav b'mukoman hen yoshvin. Do Ammon and Moab, are they in the lands that they were at the time when that verse was said, in the days of Moses, in the days of Yeshua? With the destruction of the first temple, when Sanhedrin came and he made a big war and he destroyed the first temple in our many sins. And then what did he do? He scattered the Jews all over the place. There was the 10 tribes were scattered in the exile, and the aristocracy and the Levim and the Kohanim were brought to Babylon for 70 years of exile. But that happened it didn't just happen to the Jews. It happened to all of the peoples of that war. There was such a war that the peoples were displaced. The peoples who lived, the Ammonites and the Moabites, were no longer in the lands of Ammon and Moab, roughly in Jordan. Kavar ala Sanhedrin melech Ashur u'vibalat kol umot, shene'amar v'asir gvulot amim v'atudoteihem shosheti v'orid kabir yoshvim. I have removed the bounds of the peoples, and I have robbed their treasures, and I have brought down as a mighty their inhabitants. In Isaiah chapter 10. V'orid kabir yoshvim v'kol defaresh meruba paresh. I brought down the mighty inhabitants, and although it is conceivable that this particular convert is an ethnic Amorite, nevertheless, there is no need for concern that due to the halakhic principle, anything that parts from a group parts from the majority, and the assumption is that he is from the majority of nations whose members are permitted to enter the congregation. This principle applies to many dilemmas with regard to the laws of permitted and prohibited mixtures, called the parish, meruba parish. Everything that parts from the group, we have a reasonable assumption that it parts from the majority of the group. One may rely on this principle in specific cases. In other words, the object must have spontaneously emerged from a mixture whose proportions are known. This is not the case when the object remains in the mixture. In that case, the sample is flawed, and there is room for concern that the object in question is not really from the majority components. Then the principle is anything that is fixed, i.e. remains in the mixture, is considered as evenly balanced. Kemechse el mechse, as they say. Uncertainty and anything that is fixed, meaning if it's still mixed in the mixture, then we assume that it's 50-50, that it's if it's the permitted or if it's the forbidden. And the principle is anything that is fixed, i.e. remains in the mixture, is considered as evenly balanced uncertainty, and the object is not attributed to the majority. So how does this apply to perhaps there is an Ammonite or a Moabite that coming from the land of Ammon and Moab, and he says, and Yehuda, the Ammonite convert, says, "Can I marry?" He can't be converted, but could he marry a Jewish woman? Okay, he's keeping the Torah. And back then, I don't know how they did conversions back then, but apparently it says he was a convert, or perhaps he was in the process of converting. He says, "Am I ready to get married? Am I in the club enough to get married?" Rabbi Gamliel said no. Rabbi Yeshua said yes. Why? Because first of all, Sanhedrin came and he mixed everyone up, so we have no idea who's an Ammonite or a Moabite anymore. So this law doesn't. After Sanhedrin, this law doesn't apply. You have a strong argument that it doesn't apply, and then that's not enough. If that's not enough, also called them parish meruba parish. Anything that parts from the group, parts from the majority. So because they were scattered and they were separate and spread all over the place. Because he parted from the group and joined Israel. His group was in the land of Moab, where there's a big suffix, there's an uncertainty whether it's an Ammonite or not, or any other person in the world. It could be any other of the 70 nations of the world. So because he had separated from the group, even if you were to say that these are Ammonites, if If Sanhedrin had not come, you could say that he was an Ammonite, and you'd have to wait over 10 generations. No, it says he may not come into the Kal Hashem. It's not about the 10. I don't know where I got the 10 generations. I'm thinking about the Yichus of 10 generations from Ezra, mixed up. Okay, an Ammonite can't convert. We have no Sanhedrin mixed everyone up. We don't know if he's an Ammonite. And the assumption is that he is from the majority of nations whose members are permitted to enter the congregation. The majority here is not the people living in the land of Jordan or Ammon or Moab. The majority here is all of the 70 nations of the world. And the majority of the 70 nations, and the Ammonites are a minority. So he's from the majority. He's probably from another nation, not Ammon and Moab. Amar lo Rabban Gamliel v'alo kvar ne'amar v'achrei chen ashiv et shavut b'nei Ammon nu'um Hashem. Rabbi Gamliel retorted. He said, but wasn't it already stated, but afterwards I'll bring back the captivity of the children of Ammon, says the Lord, Jeremiah 49, and they have already returned to their land. Therefore, the Ammonites came back to their land, according to the prophecy of Yirmiyah. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, v'halo kavar ne'amar v'shabti et shavut ami Yisrael, v'adayin lo shavu. Miyad hitiruhu lavo b'kahal. Rabbi Yeshua said, wasn't it already stated in another prophecy? And I will turn the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, etc., and plant vineyards and drink wine. Therefore, Sefer Amos, chapter 9. For you Americans, that's the book of Amos, chapter 9. But they haven't returned yet. The prophecy says the Jews will return. They haven't returned yet. We're talking about 1,900 years ago. Now, most of the Jews have returned to Israel. But back then, it was not so. So if this prophecy is not true, also the other prophecy is not true. It's true. Of course it's true. If this prophecy hasn't yet happened, it stands to reason that the other prophecy about the Ammonites returning to their land hasn't yet happened. Amar Rabban Gamliel huil v'hachi ava ezil v'afaiseh l'Rabbi Yeshua kimat levete chazenhu la'ashyata devete dim shacharan. Rabban Gamliel said, since this is the situation that the people are following Rabbi Yeshua, apparently he was right. Therefore, it is appropriate to go and appease him, to make peace with Rabbi Yeshua. When he reached Rabbi Yeshua's house, he saw that the walls of the house were black. Chazenhu da ashyata devete dimeshacharan. Ashyata are the walls of his house. Ashyata devete. Amarle mikotle betcha ata nikar shepechami ata. He said to him, he made a joke. He said, I see from the walls of your house that you're a blacksmith. No, it wasn't a joke, I'm sorry. I thought it would, sometimes the sages made very wry and witty comments. This is not one of them. He was being completely serious. He said, I see from the walls of your house you're a blacksmith. I had no idea that you have to engage in difficult labor to make a living. Rabban Gamliel said to Rabbi Yeshua, he didn't know Rabbi Yeshua did hard labor, to make money. He's this big genius, right? A big genius, but he's a blacksmith. He's working for a living. So, how could this be? Amarlo oilo lador she'ata parnaso she'iyata yodea b'tzaran shel talmidei chachamim b'mahem mitparnasim b'mahem nizonim. Rabbi Yeshua said, woe unto a generation that you are its leader and you are unaware of the difficulty of the Torah scholars, how they make a living and how they feed themselves. There's so many people, they work so hard and they have 2 hours a day to learn Torah, but they've been doing it for 40 years, so they're the greatest Talmidei Chachamim, because those 2 hours a day is worth, in the words of Rabbi Brovender, Shlita, those 2 hours a day, if somebody has 8 hours, and the average intelligent yeshiva guy has 8 hours a day, and then someone else is also an intelligent, God-fearing student of the Torah, but he works 8 hours a day, and he has at best 2 hours a day to study Torah. Perhaps he's going to take advantage of those 2 hours of the day and learn better than somebody who has all year to just sit around with those 8 hours a day, and he's in no rush to get anywhere. Perhaps he's going to be, the one who works is going to be more effective. But however, if somebody is on the level of a Rabban Gamliel or Rabbi Yoshua, then the community should indeed support them and allow them, because Rabbi Yoshua would take those 8 or 10, 12 hours a day, 24 hours a day on some occasions, and he would use them to the maximum. Amar lo, na'aneti lach macholi. Na'aneti lach macholi. Rabban Gamliel said, I insulted you. Please forgive me. Lo ashkich be aseh bishvil kavod Abba P.S. Rabbi Yeshua paid no attention to him and did not forgive him. He asked him again, do it in deference to my father, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, one of the leaders of Israel at the time of the destruction. So now we know that Rabban Gamliel was the generation after the destruction of the temple, not 2 generations, as I was uncertain earlier. When he said, do it for my father, Rabbi Yeshua forgave him. Amru man yezel v'lema lehu l'Rabbanan. Now that Rabbi Yeshua was no longer offended, it was only natural that Rabban Gamliel would be restored to his position. They said, who will go and inform the sages? Amar lehu hahu koves ana azelna. Nobody was eager to carry the word to Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah that, sorry, you're no longer the Nasi. It was just a few days stint, or a month. I don't know how long it took since the day of they taught Eduyot, the day he was made Nasi, and the next day when they taught Eduyot, perhaps, and the time that it came for Rabban Gamliel to come and appease with them. It might have been the next day. It might have been a longer period of time. But shortly after, they would have to depose Rabban Gamliel, like his wife had kind of predicted. So you notice that foreshadowing in the Gemara there. So there was a certain launderer. A launderer said, I'll go. The sages and the 70 members of the Sanhedrin were too shocked, they couldn't do it because they were too afraid. But who's not afraid? The simple launderer. He can do it. What's he going to do? Curse me out to be a launderer? I'm already a launderer. Okay. So, who knows? Maybe this launderer was like the biggest tzaddik in the world. Just because somebody is a big scholar, it's not a foregone conclusion that he's a big tzaddik. Koves echad, koves, ahu koves, ana azelna. I'm going to go. Shlach lehu Rabbi Yeshua lebe midrasha. Manda levish mada yilbash mada. Umanda lo levish mada. Yemar le manda levish mada. Shlach madach. Va'ana el beshe. Rabbi Eliezer ben the launderer said to them, I'll go. Rabbi Yeshua said to the sages in the study hall, the one who wears the uniform will continue to wear the uniform. The original Nasi will remain in his position. Rabbi Yeshua said, I'm stepping down. The one who did not wear the uniform will not say to the one who wears the uniform, remove your uniform and I will wear it. Mada, it was a word in the Talmud, and now today in modern Hebrew, madim. It's the same word. It was taken from the Talmud. A lot of modern Hebrew comes dafka from the Talmud. So, that language that very religious Jews don't speak, called modern Hebrew, a lot of it is actually the language, because it was the Talmud is a holy language, and even though there was the common language was Aramaic, but because it's the words of the sages, holy men, that the very religious Jews would rather speak other languages and separate between the holy and the profane, which is a very important matter. Now that everybody speaks Hebrew, modern Hebrew is not like the Aramaic of the Talmud. So there are most of the rabbis permit you to study to speak modern Hebrew. There are very Haredi, very God-fearing poskim who say don't speak modern Hebrew, or at least throw in a lot of yeshivish in your modern Hebrew enough So I think you should speak modern Hebrew. You have to just be very careful of the nuances, that it doesn't get involved in epicorsis, because there's a lot of nuances in modern Hebrew language teach about denial of the Torah and the expressions, and also there's crude expressions that have to be avoided at all costs. So anyhow, just the word madim is just, I think it's an interesting word. Okay, Amar lehu Rabbi Akiva l'Rabanan Troku Gale. Rabbi Akiva said to the sages, lock the gate so that Rabban Gamliel's servants do not come and disturb the sages. Delo lete avde de Rabban Gamliel ulitza'aru l'Rabanan. Amar Rabbi Yeshua mutav de ekum ve'ezil la'ana l'gabayu. Ata taraf abava amar lahu mazeh ben mazeh yazeh. When he heard what happened, Rabbi Yeshua said, it is best if I go to them. He came and knocked on the door. He said to them with a slight variation, one who sprinkles pure water on those who are ritually impure, son of one who sprinkles water shall come to sprinkle water. And it is inappropriate that he who neither sprinkles nor son of one who sprinkles will say to the one who sprinkles, son of one who sprinkles, your water is cave water. V'she'eno lo mazeh v'lo ben mazeh, yomar lo mazeh ben mazeh, memecha me ma'ara ve'efracha efer mikleh. Again, this translation, it sounds kind of funny in English, but I'm going to read it again. One who sprinkles pure water on those who are ritually impure, son of one who sprinkles water shall continue to sprinkle water. He's talking about Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua is talking about Rabban Gamliel. He's saying, no, I'm stepping down, he's taking his job, giving him his job back. He's one who sprinkles pure water, and he's the son of one who sprinkles pure water. And it is inappropriate that he was neither one who sprinkles nor the son of one who sprinkles. He is being diffident, and saying, I'm not as pure as Rabban Gamliel. It is for somebody not as pure as Rabban Gamliel, it should not come to one as pure as Rabban Gamliel and say that your water is cave water and not running water required to purify one exposed to ritual impurity by a corpse. And your ashes are burnt ashes. Efracha efer mikleh. They're just burnt ashes and not the ashes of the red heifer. So that's what Rabbi Yeshua said to the servants of Rabban Gamliel. He's saying, look, don't get all upset, I'm not staying. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yeshua, nitpayasta? Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Yeshua, you made peace. Have you been appeased? Klum asinu ela bishvil kvodecha. All we have done only for your honor. Lamachar ani v'ata nashkim lefitcho. Tomorrow we're going to get up earlier. We're going to bring Rabban Gamliel back as the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. Amar hechi navid navre gemiri. The question arose, what do we do with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? They said, what shall we do? Remove him from his position. Ma'alim b'kodesh ve'en moridin. This is inappropriate because we have a halachic tradition that says one elevates to a higher level of sanctity, but one does not downgrade. Nidrash mar chada shabta or mar chada shabta. So let's give them that yes, Rabban Gamliel will be the Nasi, but we're going to allow Rabbi Yeshua Rabban Gamliel will be the Nasi, but Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. What was this Rabbi Yeshua here? Okay. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is not going to be the Nasi anymore. Rabban Gamliel is going to be the Nasi. However, we're going to give Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah the honor of delivering the weekly discourse every other week. They're going to trade off. So one won't be jealous of the other. The lashon is nidrash mar chada shabbata v'mar chada shabbata ate lekanuye. Oh no, sorry. They would, if you let them trade off, it doesn't mean they would not be jealous of each other. It wouldn't say it's fair, we're being honored equally. No, they would become jealous of each other. And they would be forced to appoint one as the acting head of the Sanhedrin. So they say, let's let them face off for a while, and then they're going to be jealous of each other, and eventually they're going to have to reconcile their differences. Ella, let's try it differently, he said. Ella lidrosh Rabban Gamliel tzlata Shabbat, but Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Shabbat chada Shabbat. Let Rabban Gamliel lecture 3 weeks, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will be the head of the yeshiva 1 week. In other words, we're going to go for a period of time without a nasi, and we're going to go back and forth between the two and see who wins. Hainu de'amar mar Shabbat shel mi hayta shel Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah hayta. This arrangement was adopted, and that is the explanation of the exchange in Tractate Chagiga. Whose week is it? It is the week of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the one out of every 4 weeks. Once a month. V'oto Talmud Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Hava. One final detail. The student who asked the original question that sparked the entire incident was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. The one who asked, Hechi Navi, what are we going to do with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? That was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. V'shel Musafin kol hayom. We'll go back to the Mishnah. Shel Musafin kol hayom, Amar Rabbi Yochanan v'nikra poshea. Additional prayer, the Musaf prayer may be recited all day. Rabbi Yochanan said, nevertheless, one who postpones his prayer excessively is called, I wouldn't say, literally it's a criminal, but we say here negligence. The Hebrew word poshea can refer either to a transgressor who commits a crime, breaks the halacha, or a transgression to one who someone commits a transgression, or to one who is negligent, who is guilty of pshia, or negligence. The word pshia means negligence as well as negligence. Pesha is a crime, meaning to break the halacha. As one is within his rights to recite the additional prayer all day, referring to him as a transgressor is a bit extreme, because it's mutar. You can't exactly take somebody to court and make a federal case over somebody who says musaf at the end of the day. As long as he says Musaf and Mincha before sunset, he said the words, what he did was mutar, and you can't go against him. But you could say, you can call him a poshea in the sense that you wouldn't say poshea, because nowadays nobody knows that it means negligence, it means criminal. Nowadays it means criminal, so you say, it's sat peshia. It's a little negligent, because why? Because he might have other people would look and they'd say, when somebody shows up late, they look like a transgressor. Say, oh, he's not careful about time, what else is he doing? Blah, blah, blah. People start talking about him. So just, so people don't talk. Shouldn't do things to attract negative attention. That's the Musar Heskel. Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Tana Rabban Hayiluf and Avshtei Tefillot, Echad Shel Mincha v'Echad Shel Musaf, Mitpalel Shel Mincha v'Chakak Mitpalel Shel Musaf. If you have 2 tefillahs before you, according to the rabbis, Musaf and Mincha, first to daven Musaf, first to daven Mincha, and then afterwards you say Musaf. It's come time for Mincha, you do Tadir Kodem. Whatever is usual, you do first. So Tadira, so Ena Tadira, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mitpalel Shel Musaf, Achak Shel Mitpalel Shel Mincha. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you follow the order. First you do Musaf, then Mincha, because Musaf is supposed to become before Mincha. Shezo mitzvah overet, zo mitzvah she'ena overet. Because because the time is coming. The time is faster approaching to that you'll daven Musaf late, because Rabbi Yehuda says we don't have all day to say Musaf. We only have a certain amount of time to say Musaf until the 7th hour, and you have until sunset to say Mincha. So because there's that overlapping time between 6.5 hours and 7 hours, and it's ad bichlal including it, so there's an overlapping time of an hour or so. So it's the 7th hour including the 7th hour. And it's also time for Mincha in the 7th hour. So what do you do first? Rabbi Yehuda says you do Musaf and then you do Mincha. Because this, Musaf, is a mitzvah whose time soon elapses, and it may only be recited until the 7th hour. And this, the afternoon prayer, is a mitzvah whose time does not elapse, but one may recite it until the midpoint of the afternoon, Plag Mincha. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha mitpalel shel mincha v'charka mitpalel shel musaf. Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is he says musaf and then he says mincha. According, he says mincha and then musaf after. That's in accordance with the rabbis. Rabbi Zera ki hacha chalesh migirse hava azel v'yatev apitcha debe Rabbi Natan bar Tovi. The Gemara cites an additional source. When Rabbi Zera would tire of his studies, he would go and sit in the doorway of Rabbi Natan bar Tovi's study hall. He said to himself, Amar, Ki chalfe Rabbanan az ekum mikamayhu vakabel agra. He said Rabbi Zera was so tired, he couldn't learn, he'd been breaking his head on his studies, he was just exhausted, he didn't have the strength. So what would he do? He'd say, I just haven't enough strength to go sit in the doorway of the study hall, in the door of the Beis Medrash, and when a sage comes by, then I'll get up, I'll be able to get up. I have just enough strength for that, but I don't have the strength to use, I've exhausted my mind power. So at least I'll be doing a mitzvah, at least I'll get a reward for honoring Torah scholars. Nafakata Rabbi Natan bar Tovi. Rabbi Natan bar Tovi himself came out of the Beis Medrash and came to where Rabbi Zera was seated at the doorway. Amarle, man amar halacha be medrasha. Rabbi Zera said to him, who just said the halacha in the Beis Medrash in the study hall? Amarle, hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan. Ein halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda, de amar mitpalel adam shel musaf, achar kach mitpalel shel mincha. He said to him, the halacha is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, who said he recites musaf and then he recites mincha. Amarle Rabbi Yochanan Amara. Rabbi Zera said to him, Amarle, Rabbi Yochanan Amara. Did Rabbi Yochanan himself say this halacha? Amarle in Tanamine Arba'in Zimni. He learned this statement from him 40 times, etching it into his memory. Amarle Chade Hilach. Rabbi Natan said to him, is this halacha so dear to you because it is singular for you? It's the only halacha you learned in the name of Rabbi Yochanan? Is that why you're repeating it 40 times? Because it's the only halacha you've heard from Rabbi Yochanan? Oh, chadat hilach. Or is it new to you? You're previously unaware, so you wanted to go over it many times because it's a new teaching. Amar le chada hili. He said, it's new to me. Mishum de mesapka li Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It's new to me. I was uncertain of this halacha when it was said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan or in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Now it's clear to me that it's in the name. I knew the halacha, but I didn't know if it was from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi or if it was from Rabbi Yochanan. Now it's very clear to me that it's from Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Kol hamitpalel tefila shel musafin la'achar sheva shot l'Rabbi Yehuda, alav haktuv omer, Nuge mimoed asafti mimech hayu. Nuge mimoed asafti mimech hayu. Those, the Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, anyone who says Musaf after 7 hours of the day, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the verse says, those who are destroyed, Nuge, far from the festivals I shall gather from you. They who carried for you the burden of insult. That's from Tzfania chapter 3. For you regular folks, it's Zephaniah. But we call it Tzfania. So, my mashma dahai nuge. From where may it be inferred that nuge is an expression of destruction? Lishna detavrahu. Destruction, it's as Reb. My mashma de nuge lishna detavrahu. From where do you infer that nuge means destruction? Kida Metargem Rav Yosef. It's according to the explanation of Rav Yosef. Tavra ate al Sanehon devet Yisrael al da acharu zimne moadaya de Yerushalayim. So Rav Yosef translated this whole verse in Tzfania into Aramaic in this way. The Aramaic I just read, in English it means destruction comes upon the enemies of the house of Israel. A euphemism for Israel, self-hating Jews who hate the Torah are called the enemies of Israel in a polite and oblique way. Just sometimes the Talmud will say Yisrael, and what it really is Sonei Yisrael. And you think it means other nations who hate Israel, anti-Semites from other nations. No, it actually refers to, there are actually some Jews in the world who hate the Torah, and they hate the Talmud even more. And, the Tinok Shenishba, whatever you want to call them, they just don't understand. If we had good rabbis in our generation who could actually reach them and explain it to them in a way that in their own language and speak to from the heart and to the heart, then we wouldn't have these self-hating Jews. But where are the teachers today? We need Mashiach. We basically need Mashiach who can sway their hearts. But until then, we have to do the best we can. Everybody has to try to speak in a respectful and polite way, and to encourage the Torah to a listening ear, and if not, just live by example and just be a good person, and then they'll just get jealous and hate you even more. People. A good example is always a good thing, and it could inspire people to become closer to the Torah. So, anyhow, Rav Yosef translated the verse, those who are destroyed, nuge, far from the festivals, etc. He said, destruction comes upon the enemies of the house of Israel, for they have delayed the times of the festivals in Jerusalem. That proves that nuge means both destruction and also somebody who fails to fulfill a mitzvah at a certain time, meaning they weren't bringing the sacrifices on the 3 pilgrimage festival officing, Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuos. They were bringing the sacrifices late, so God forbid not at all. Amar Rabbi Elazar, kol mitpilal tefillah shel shacharit lachar 4 sha'ot Rabbi Yehuda, alav k'tuv omer, nuge mimoed asafti mimechayu. Similarly, Rabbi Elazar said regarding anyone who recites the morning prayer after 4 hours of the day, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the verse states, those who are in sorrow, nugi, from the festivals, nuge, from the festivals, I shall gather from you. They who carried for you the burden of insult. The same verse. My mashma dahai nuge. What does nuge mean here? Lishna detzarahu. Is nuge mean an expression of sorrow? Diktiv. Dalfa nafshi mituga. That's like it is written. My soul drips sorrow. Tuga. Nuge. The same roots. That's in Psalm 119. Verse 28. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Nehacha. B'tluteha nugot v'hi marla. We learned that nuge means is an expression of sorrow from Lamentations Echa chapter 1. Her virgins are sorrow, nugot, and she's embittered. And we're going to save the next amud. It's a very long amud, and it took a long time to get through it because of interesting asides. And I'm going to try to zip through the next page as fast as I can in the next video. And Mirz Hashem, I'm going to try to force myself to be more concise instead of giving these 3-4 hour Daf Yomi shares that nobody will ever listen to, except 1 or 2 brave souls. So be well from Jerusalem.